Sit over here.
Try that with me. Try that again. That's the whole thing. Try it from the beginning.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's my first time being in this sanctuary. I mean, not being in the sanctuary, but leading services from this sanctuary. And it is such a lovely space. We also have a new piece of art over here that I'm going to learn more about next week. But it is such a wonderful opportunity to be in this tent. This building was designed to be like a tent. See, I learned stuff. This space was designed to be like a tent. And how wonderful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. We continue on page 338 with the words of Elechamda Libi. We sang this last week. And so hopefully you'll be able to join in.
Join with us. Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi. Try it again. We're going to do it. Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi. Repeat it again. Keep going. Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi, Hosanna. Hosanna back to Eli.
Elechamda Libi,
Elechamda Libi,
Elechamda Libi,
Elechamda Libi,
Elechamda Libi, Elechamda Libi. I'd like to invite Sylvia up to light our Shabbat candles. The lighting of the candles can be found on pages 3 and 2. It's pretty exciting in here. Okay, great. Hi.
Shabbat Shalom. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. All right. Yeah, and there's usually a little.
If we have the actual one tonight, because
Oh, okay.
so you just like.
Oh, okay.
And then like
Just do it. Okay. This should be fine. Oh, thank you. Great, thanks. All right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen.
Thanks.
Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue with the beautiful words, Ma Yafeh Hayom, how beautiful this day, Shabbat Shalom, this day of peace, on page 10 as we sing together. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with L'Chadodi on page 20 and 21 as we welcome the Sabbath bride. We'll be doing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. On the 9th, we rise as a community to welcome the bride at the entrance of our sanctuary, and we join together in this melody. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'zimor echad yishmi'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litila lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela likrat Shabbat lechol v'nelcha ki mekor habracha merosh mikedem nezucha asof ma'aseh b'machshava tehila lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela hitoreri hitoreri ki ba'orech mi ori lecha dodi, likrat ala pnei Shabbat, nekabela lecha dodi, likrat ala pnei Shabbat, nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzolav, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, lecha dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabela lecha dodi, likrat ala pnei Shabbat, nekabela.
Now everyone can hear me. You may be seated. We have welcomed in the Shabbat bride, and now we welcome in the Shabbat angels to join us for our service. Shalom Aleichem is on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moachem Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Nil Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We conclude these beginning part of our service with Hatzi Kaddish on page 26. Yitkada, Yitkada, Shemei Rabbah. V'yamad yivrach Yerutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, u'v'chayeyoto Beit Yisrael, bagala, bagala, u'v'zman kariv, v'imro.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam olam me'omaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach ve'yishtabach, ve'yitpa'ar v'yiromam ve'yitnaseh, ve'yithadar, ve'yitaleh, ve'yitalal, Shemei dekodeshah. Barichu le'elamin kovechatav v'shiratav, tushbechatav v'nechematav, damiran le'alma ve'imro.
Amen. Rise and body your spirit for Baruch Hu, the call to worship.
Yai la la la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la, yai la la la, yai la la la, yai la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach, Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, le'olam va'ed. Yai la la la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la. Ay la la la, ay la la la, ay la 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 la, ay la 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 la.
Page 30. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim.
We continue with Ahavat Olam, leading into Shema. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amecha Avta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu lemadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu v'komeinu, nasiach b'chukecha. V'nizmach b'divrei Toratcha, u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeh yomam v'layla v'ahavatcha Atasir mimenu leolamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malachoto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated.
Continue on page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shochbecha u'kumecha Ukeshartam leot al yadecha ve'hayu letotafot bein einecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 39, we join together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Now we'll ask if you hold your place on page 40 as we sing Miriam's song to celebrate the freedom and the joy that the women experienced with the timbrel and with their hearts and with their song and with their dance, which is on page 342. And then we'll jump back to page 40.
Is the tambourine that was out there still there?
No.
The preschool had left when we were setting up the sanctuary.
I know, it is, but it's unfortunately in the social hall.
Okay.
But you can run again. Anyway, okay. Join with us. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every thread and every strand she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances towards the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. As Miriam stood upon the shores and gazed across the seas, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance tonight. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha neder HaKodesh, nora tehilot osei felem, nora tehilot osei felem. Malechotecha ra'u banecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, zelianu ve'amru, zelianu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Oh my goodness.
Can you hear me?
You can hear me. Now we can hear. Okay. Now I can hear myself. We're going to continue with Hashkivenu, this prayer for asking a shelter of peace to spread over us on this Shabbat. You can find it on page 43. Page 43. Actually, all right. Actually, 42. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Oshmor tzeiteinu, uvoenu, l'chaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
B'Shamru, we celebrate Shabbat, page 44.
ושמרו ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Try that with me. ושמרו ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש Vayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat Lasot et hashabat Lidorotam berit olam Lidorotam berit olam Lidorotam berit olam.
The Amidah continues on page 46. I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 Ofi Agid. Ofi Agid Tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 Ofi Agid. Ofi Agid Tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 Ofi Agid. Ofi Agid Tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai tiftach. Na 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 Ofi Agid. Ofi Agid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahavav Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atarav lehoshia, Morid hatal. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, O matir asurim, O mekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha bal givurot, O midom elach, Melech memit, O mechayeh, O matmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata lachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
We continue with our private prayers. When you've finished with your prayers, you may be seated.
On page 60. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tarsim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Tarsim leolam, ki atah melech adon lecho shalom, ki atah melech adon lecho shalom. וטוב עיניך, וברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
We think on this Shabbat and every Shabbat of those in our community who are in need of healing, whether that's healing of mind, healing of body, or healing of spirit. And I invite you at this time to share the names of those that you're thinking of.
The Kleiner family, Michelle, those struggling tonight with COVID.
Words of Mishaberach can be found on page 253.
Mishaberach Avodeinu Mekor Abracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We also take a few moments to celebrate joys of this and blessings of this past week. Does anyone have something good that has happened to them that they'd like to share? Nice. New property for new venture. Anyone else?
I'm going up to Canada with 2 other Temple members for the Jewish Reform Women's Convention. I can't remember what it is.
Women of Reformed Judaism?
No, thank you,
Yep.
Women of Reform Judaism. This weekend, so.
Yes, this weekend is the Women of Reformed Judaism Pacific Northwest Regional Conference. Yeah, nice. Ooh, you accepted a new job position.
She's staying here, don't worry. A second one. Mazel tov.
Nice, new school, new opportunities. I got to take Yuval to his first baseball game.
At Cheney Stadium?
At Cheney Stadium, the Rainiers versus the Chihuahuas. I don't actually know who won because they were still tied by the end of the 10th inning and it was 10 o'clock. Joy.
This is sort of inane, but I just learned today from my granddaughter that fish and chips were started by a Jew.
Fish and chips were invented by Jews.
By the first known serving of fish and chips was in England at a Jewish, I don't want to say peddler, but yes. And I thought that was kind of interesting, not necessarily what.
That must be why I like fish and chips. With malt, that's why I like fish and chips with malt.
Yeah, clearly a Jewish food.
Exactly. Thank you.
For all these blessings and joys and interesting tidbits, we say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lehodot. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I did not particularly enjoy gym when I was in school, my phys ed class. I often scheduled lessons with my orchestra director during that class period, during which I would sit in his office and chat and occasionally practice my violin. And then it would count as an excused absence rather than cutting class. Even though, let's be honest, I was cutting class. It wasn't that I had a particular dislike of the different sports or games, although there were a couple of sports that I absolutely did not like, running being one of them. Mostly, though, the problem was that when we played team sports, it just wasn't fun. My friends could usually be counted on to jump in and play no matter how bad we were, but about half the class would have a variety of excuses for not playing, or if they couldn't get out of it, they just would stand there and not try. It's hard to play soccer or volleyball or field hockey or whatever it was when you only have a few players on your team, or Some of them run away when the ball comes toward them, or they just stand there disengaged. You can't pass to them. They don't jump in and try to save the ball from landing on the ground. It's just not fun. I remember one cold, dreary afternoon on the lawn by the teacher's parking lot when we were supposed to be playing flag football. At that point in my life, I had never been to a football game, nor had I ever watched a game on TV, even though this was high school. I didn't understand it at all. But I had sort of a sense that it was popular enough that maybe I should have some vague understanding of football. Nevertheless, within 10 or 15 minutes, there were only 3 of us playing. My friend Janet, some girl whose name I don't remember, I can't even picture her right now, and myself. Everyone else was sitting off to the side, or the boys were off playing their own game a little bit more, violently. We finally had to convince the boys to let us join their game, to not be too rough, and to explain what was happening. They were not thrilled. I was reminded of this episode when I was reading this week's Parsha, Matot Mas'eh, which is actually a double portion. At the end of Matot, the first of the 2 Parshiot, 2.5 of the 12 tribes come to Moses and say that they don't actually want to live in the Promised Land. They're happy with the land that they recently conquered, the land of Midian, on the east side of the Jordan River. The Promised Land is to the west of the Jordan. They want the land on the east side because it's better for their cattle. Moses hears the requests of these tribes, the tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh, and freaks out, to put it lightly. His first thought is that these tribes are going to settle in this land that is not the Promised Land, and in doing so, sway the other tribes into deciding not to settle in the Promised Land either. Then God won't be able to fulfill the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to return their descendants to that land, and the sins of the Canaanites won't be punished, and here's yet another rebellious, unfaithful generation, and God will kill everyone in anger, and there isn't enough time anymore to start over with new people who will trust in God and be part of that inherited covenantal relationship. Oi. Moses' first thought is that the Gadites, the Reubenites, and half of the Manassites are like my classmates in gym, and me at times, shirking our commitments to the people who are relying on our full participation. He worries that they are trying to get out of work they don't want to do, and that if enough people refuse to fight, the battle will be lost before it's even begun. And then, everything he has worked for 40 years, and that God has had in the works for 400, will have been for naught. Once Moses has had his chance to vent his frustration and fears, the leaders of the tribes step up and make a promise. Not only will they join the fight for the Promised Land, but they will also actually lead the Israelite troops in battle. Their desire for the land east of the Jordan is truly based on its ability to support cattle, and it's not a veiled attempt to shirk their duty to the larger community and God. They will settle their families, build houses, towns, and sheepfolds, and then they will lead the fight for the Promised Land. Only once the leaders of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh offer to fight, and we don't know if this was their plan to begin with or just a bargaining chip, Moses relaxes. I imagine a puffed up, defensive, and angry Moses just sort of deflating as he realizes that everything will be okay. I hear him resigned to this latest adjustment, allowing these 2.5 tribes to settle east of the Jordan on the condition that they lead the fight. He even throws in the consequence that if they don't fulfill that promise, they'll have to settle in the Promised Land, whether they like it or not, and bear their sin before God. The challenge of being in community, really being in any group larger than one, is that sometimes we have to do things that are less beneficial for us in order to support the group. We might be like the Gadites, Reubenites, and Manassites, having to put ourselves at risk to fight for the benefit of others. We might have to do something uncomfortable, like join in a sports game or wear masks to support our friends and neighbors. We might have to give up some of what is ours. For example, paying taxes to ensure that services are available to the entire community. By choosing to live in community and be in relationship with others, we commit to this ebb and flow of contribution and receipt. We can't just do whatever we want when we want. Sometimes we have to prioritize the community's needs. We are currently in a period known as the 3 weeks, which occur between the dates that commemorate the breaching of the walls of the Old City of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Holy Temple 3 weeks later. I know, creatively named, the 3 weeks. Our tradition teaches that such a tragedy befell our ancestors because of sinat chinam. Sinat chinam is usually translated as baseless hatred, but that's not entirely accurate. If you really wanted to say baseless hatred, you would say sina l'shav or something along those lines. Instead, sinat chinam should be understood as free hatred, when we choose hate and annoyance and frustration freely. Often this free hatred comes from a place of fear. People are afraid of losing what they have, whether it's money or property or culture or way of life, even if it will ultimately benefit everyone in the community. Fearing that loss and unable to see the larger gain, they hate the people who are taking what they think is rightfully theirs. Communities cannot survive like that and still remain healthy. They can only survive with ahavat chinam, freely shared compassion, kindness, and love, and a commitment to our covenantal duties toward each other. We are now just a week away from Tisha B'Av, the day commemorating the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem. May we use this time to consider how we engage with our communities, to notice when we shirk from our responsibilities and when we commit, to examine where we can give and where we can take. And then perhaps we might be able to really create a community of blessing. Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to invite Sylvia back up to share some announcements with our community.
Shabbat Shalom.
Speak closer to the microphone.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the sermon, Rabbi and Cantor, for the music, and all the temple members that help out, including the AV staff and security staff and support staff. We appreciate all that you do. The announcements are pretty simple this week. Our Torah study is a Zoom study at 9. The services are Zoom and live at 10, and there's a Havdalah service on Zoom. This Sunday, I guess some people from the temple hikers will be going to Mount Rainier. Hopefully it'll be cool enough. Jewish Book Club will be Tuesday at the temple. And there will be a tweens and teens pizza meeting, not a meeting, party, this Wednesday. In terms of some opportunities for the temple, the Belk Fund is looking for more funding to help with enhanced activities. The Geshet Youth is soliciting for creative offerings, answering the question, at the intersection of queer and Jewish Family Services is asking for volunteers for people to help resettle. Any questions regarding any of these activities, please feel free to look at Shabbat Shalom bulletin or call the temple. And obviously, if you have any questions for the clergy, please give them an email. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Shabbat. Stay cool and stay well.
Thank you, Sylvia. We turn now to page 282 and Rise in Body or Spirit for Aleinu. I don't know how to do this yet.
That's okay. Aleinu l'shaveach l'Adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As our thoughts turn to those who have departed in recent days or who have died at this time in years past, we name our loved ones and the loved ones of this community. We think especially of Barbara Kleiner, for whom we are in the period of Shloshim. And we think of Harold Bricker, Michael V. Brusser, Moses Einsenfeld, Helen Kosakoff, Feinberg, Arnold Flax, Julian Graff, Fred Hollander, Jacqueline Jaworski, Alan Kiesel, Bessie Lehrer, Bob Leonard, Fanny Levine, Saul Levy, Louis Lowenstein, Anna Mandels, Aaron Mandels, Amanda Padden, Vicki Perry, Larry Pfeiffer, Addie Poole, Boris Portnoy, Simon Rose, Mary Joan Salerno, Ralph Schneider, Aaron Schwartz, Dennis Seinfeld, Edith Schindel, Rita Snooky Simon, Frank Spiegel, Sonia Stoller, Jack Varon, Lillian Wittenberg, Yefim Ziskin, and Abraham David Zweibel, whose yard sites occurred in the past week. As we think of them, we say, Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be a blessing. The Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, B'agala uv'izman kariv v'yumru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal Shmei dekudasha brichu, La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'el kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru. Amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. And we conclude this evening with the words of Adon Olam, page 321.
Yes, and this is something I wrote for in memory of Barbara Cadden of blessed memory, and just the reason that I wrote it was because the text at the very end influenced me that says, "Into your hands I entrust my spirit when I sleep and when I wake, and with my spirit my body also. Adonai is with me and I shall not fear." So join with me, page 321. It's an easy melody. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefzo kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, Ve'acharei kichlot hakol, Levado yimloch nora, Ve'hu haya, Ve'hu hove, Ve'hu yeh b'tifara. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefzo kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, V'hu echad ve'ein sheni, lehamshil lo lehachbira, b'li reshit b'li tachlit, v'lo haoz v'hamizra. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefzo kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, V'hu Eli v'chai goali, v'tzorchev li be'et tzara, v'hu nisi omanos li, menat kosi b'yom ekra. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefzo kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra. B'yado afkid ruchi, be'et ishan ve'ayira, ve'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li v'lo ira. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, Le'et Nasa, V'chefzo kol, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And we're going to have Kiddush on page 5, followed by Motzi on page 302. Please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratza banu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh ha-shabbat l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, b'te'avon. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Please wish
shalom.
each other good